Gauteng police have released the names and images of 5 suspects for their alleged role in a mass tavern shooting in Soweto. The men have been identified as Sarel Lihlanya Sello, Tsepiso Elliot Radebe, Tabang Radikatara, Tidiso Moleko and Keletso Rabasoto. It's believed the suspects opened fire on patrons at a popular Mdlalose tavern in July, killing 16 people. 77 others, that is, were hurt in that incident. Last month, the Gauteng Premier David Makhura announcing that the suspects had allegedly fled the country. Well, for more on the story, we're joined by Thembisa Fakude, who is a researcher at Africa-Asia Dialogues. Good evening, Thembisa. A pleasure to have you with us tonight. Of course, the surprising thing here is that one of the suspects in this matter now seems to have been linked to a political organization.
Yes, he's linked to the ABC, which is the political organization based in Lesotho. But still, that doesn't, I don't think we should jump into conclusions as many have done in South Africa, because it might just create tensions which we've seen flaring up in the past couple of months, particularly those of xenophobia, because what's insinuated here is that there's some foreign nationals were involved in this. And that profiling, for me, I think could be problematic, because we could be jumping a gun. They might have relatives, they might be South Africans, we don't know, but we know that one of them is associated with a political party. Similarly, we had something similar happening in South Africa not long ago, when the daughter of a political leader was killed, and the killers were again linked to a political party. That does not necessarily mean that the political party was behind the crime. So we need to deal with this crime and with its merits. And I think right now it's just too early for us to make a conclusion whether that foreign national belonging to that particular party was representing his party when committing this crime.
Thembisa, what's interesting is that just a couple of weeks ago now, it could well be around a month, we had the officials of the Lesotho government issue a blanket apology for crime that some of their nationals could well be committing in South Africa. And it was following that gang rape that took place in Krugersdorp.
Yes, that's true, and I had that. Well, that's the position of the Lesotho government. What triggered that apology, I'm not quite sure. But my only concern is that jumping into conclusions in such instances, given the volatile situation that we find ourselves in South Africa, particularly that of xenophobia, we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we're on a back foot in terms of trying to defend a certain group of individuals, most of whom are innocently working in South Africa and legitimately working in South Africa, simply because one of them might have committed a crime. We don't want to push a situation where they are targeted unduly simply because of association.
Do you think it's a case that perhaps needs to be handled differently, including by the police in terms of how they're sharing information on who these suspects are?
I think, yes, they should be very careful on how this is done. I understand right now that all of us are looking for solutions, and are upset because of a particular group of individuals coming from a particular country who are continuing to create havoc and crimes, particularly the Zamazamas associated with a nation in Southern Africa. And that, for me, is problematic. And I'm saying this because I was at some stage involved in a campaign when I was a senior manager with a television channel called Al Jazeera in the Middle East. And there were complaints, for example, from the Muslim community that the Western media often jump to the conclusion whenever there's a terrorist attack. And it was a convincing argument, and we somehow managed to produce news in a manner that did not implicate people whenever a crime of terrorism occurred, particularly in the Western countries, and other international media institutions followed suit. So we find ourselves in a similar situation in South Africa, where we need to be careful on how we frame these stories, but particularly we also need to be careful of not mentioning the nationality of those that are involved in these crimes, because there are a sizable number of people coming from different countries in Southern Africa who are legitimate in this country and who are doing good work contributing towards our economy, etc. So there is that handful who often tend to mess up the image of a much more bigger group. So we have to be careful on our friendlies. And I think the Minister of Police has to be also extremely careful. I know it's easy and it's low-hanging to convince all of us that they're doing the work by revealing the names and nations of those that are accused of these crimes, but I'm not quite sure whether it's helpful.
Thembisa, just to end off then here, do you think that there is a risk of creating diplomatic fallouts, or perhaps fallouts might not be the right word here, but that this could have implications for the diplomatic relationships that South Africa has with its counterparts in the SADC region?
I certainly think so. I think there's going to be that diplomatic head-on collusion in due course, particularly with two particular countries, Zimbabwe, well, three at least for now, Zimbabwe, Swaziland, and Lesotho, where the nationals and governments of those countries are continuing to be accused of certain things. The Swazi people, for example, who are in this country, accused the monarchy of certain violation of rights, and we have South Africans accusing Lesotho and, again, Zimbabweans of being in this country illegally. So this has to be maintained and kind of choreographed extremely carefully, because if we don't do so, we are likely to have a problem with our diplomatic relations with these two very important neighbors, by the way, who reside in countries with very poor borders with South Africa, and I'm not quite sure whether we are ready to defend themselves should anything crop up as a result of this fired-up rhetoric that's coming from both sides.
Thembisa Fakude, researcher at the Africa-Asia Dialogues. Thanks for your time tonight.